My name is Rachel, and at 34, I stand in my thriving bakery watching customers line up for my signature pastries. 5 years ago, I was completely broken by the two people I trusted most in this world. My husband Mark and my younger sister Emma destroyed everything I believed about love and family. But today, I'm living proof that sometimes the worst betrayal can become your greatest transformation. Before I share how I turned devastating heartbreak into sweet success, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by those closest to you, and stick around to discover how everything changed in ways none of us saw coming. At 29, I thought I had everything figured out. Mark and I had been married for 3 wonderful years, living in our dream colonial home in a quiet Connecticut suburb. He worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, always charming clients with his warm smile and quick wit. I taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school, where my students filled my days with laughter and innocent questions about the world. Life felt complete, or so I believed. That summer changed everything when my younger sister Emma graduated from college with her marketing degree. She was 24, bright and ambitious, but the job market wasn't cooperating with her plans. Our parents called me one evening, worry evident in their voices. Emma had been struggling living in an expensive city apartment she could no longer afford, sending out dozens of applications without success. Mom's voice cracked when she asked if Emma could stay with us temporarily, just until she found her footing. I didn't hesitate. Emma was my baby sister, the one I'd protected from playground bullies and helped with homework throughout her school years. Our spare bedroom sat empty anyway, decorated but unused, waiting for the children Mark and I had been trying to conceive for 2 years without success. When I told Mark about Emma moving in, he seemed hesitant at first, running his hand through his dark hair, the way he always did when processing unexpected news. "Are you sure about this, Rachel?" he asked, setting down his coffee mug on our granite countertop. "We've been enjoying having our space, and with everything we're going through with the fertility treatments." I moved closer to him, taking his hands in mine. "She's family, Mark. She needs us right now. Besides, it might be nice having someone else around the house. Emma's always been easy to live with, and she promised it would only be for a few months." Mark studied my face for a moment, then pulled me into his arms. "You're right. Family comes first. We'll make it work." Emma arrived on a humid Thursday afternoon in July, her car packed with boxes and suitcases. She looked smaller somehow, defeated by her circumstances, nothing like the confident girl who'd walked across that graduation stage just weeks earlier. I helped her carry her belongings upstairs while Mark assembled the desk we'd bought for her room. By dinner time, we were all sitting around our dining table sharing Chinese takeout and trying to make her feel at home. The first month was actually wonderful. Emma threw herself into her job search, with renewed energy, spending hours perfecting her resume and cover letters. She insisted on contributing to the household, cooking elaborate dinners she'd learned from cooking shows, keeping the house spotless while Mark and I were at work. Our Friday night tradition of watching movies expanded to include her, and Sunday mornings meant 3 coffee cups instead of 2 at our favorite farmer's market. I started noticing small changes around the 6th week. Mark offered to review Emma's resume one evening, and they stayed up until past midnight at the dining room table, their heads bent close together over her laptop. When I came down for water, they both looked up with startled expressions, quickly shifting apart. "Just helping her with some industry terminology," Mark explained, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "These marketing positions want specific keywords." Emma nodded enthusiastically, maybe too enthusiastically. "Mark knows so much about professional presentation. He's been incredibly helpful." Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was my husband and my sister. My imagination was running wild from stress and exhaustion. The fertility medications made me emotional paranoid even. Dr. Harrison had warned me about mood swings as a side effect. As August melted into September, Emma started getting interview calls. She'd emerge from her room dressed in my professional clothes, having asked to borrow them since she couldn't afford new interview outfits yet. I noticed she'd started wearing my perfume too, the expensive bottle Mark had given me for our anniversary. When I mentioned it, she apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I just wanted to smell professional and confident. Your perfume makes me feel like I can conquer anything like you do. How could I be upset with that? I hugged her and told her she could use whatever she needed. That's what sisters did for each other. My best friend Lisa called me one afternoon while I was grading papers. Hey, I saw Mark's car at that new coffee place downtown around lunch today, playing hooky from work. Must have been a client meeting, I replied, though Mark hadn't mentioned any lunch appointments. He's been working extra hard lately trying to exceed his quarterly targets. Emma was with him, Lisa added casually. They seemed pretty deep in conversation. My pen stilled on the paper I was grading. She had an interview downtown today. He probably gave her a ride since the train schedule is unreliable midday. That's sweet of him, Lisa said, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. That evening, Mark came home with flowers, beautiful white roses that he knew were my favorites. He kissed me deeply, told me I looked beautiful, and suggested we try that new Italian restaurant I'd been wanting to visit. Emma stayed home claiming she was exhausted from her interview. As Mark and I shared pasta and wine, he seemed entirely focused on me asking about my students holding my hand across the table. I felt foolish for harboring any doubts. October arrived with its stunning fall colors, and Emma's confidence seemed to bloom like the changing leaves. She'd bought new clothes, somehow professional pieces that fit her perfectly. Her hair looked different, too highlighted and styled in a way that made her look older, more sophisticated. When I complimented her transformation, she credited YouTube tutorials and discount shopping. I got a job offer, she announced one evening, bursting through the front door with uncharacteristic energy. Assistant marketing coordinator at a pharmaceutical company. The champagne Mark produced seemed to appear too quickly, as if he'd been expecting the news. We toasted Emma's success, but I noticed she and Mark avoided direct eye contact during dinner. When I stood to clear the plates, they both jumped up to help, bumping into each other awkwardly in their haste. You two relax, I said, waving them back to their seats. I've got this. From the kitchen I could hear them talking in low voices, their words indistinct, but their tone intimate somehow. When I returned with dessert, they were sitting at opposite ends of the table, the conversation apparently over. My mother called the next morning while I was preparing lessons for the week. Emma seems so different lately, she observed. More mature, more confident. You and Mark have been such good influences on her. She's always had it in her, I replied, watching through the window as Emma and Mark loaded his car. He was driving her to look at apartments closer to her new job, they'd said. Still living with a stable married couple, seeing what real partnership looks like, it's been good for her. Maybe she'll find someone like Mark someday. The comment should have warmed my heart, but instead it left me cold. I ended the call quickly, claiming I needed to finish my lesson plans. The signs accumulated like fallen leaves I kept stepping over, refusing to acknowledge the path they were creating. Emma suddenly knew when Mark switched from regular coffee to oat milk lattes. She laughed at references to TV shows I didn't know he watched. When he worked late, she often had plans with friends that kept her out until similar hours. They went to the same gym, though, at different times, they assured me. My colleague Nancy was going through a brutal divorce, and she'd corner me in the teacher's lounge with warnings disguised as casual conversation. You know what I wish I'd paid attention to, she said one day, stirring sugar into her coffee with unnecessary vigor. The little things. The way he'd light up when certain text messages came through. The sudden interest in his appearance. The working late that never showed up on pay stubs. I nodded sympathetically, but internally dismissed her paranoia as projection from her own pain. Mark and Emma weren't her ex-husband. They were my family. The negative pregnancy test in November hit harder than the previous ones. I sat on our bathroom floor staring at the single line that mocked my dreams. When I finally emerged, Mark was in our bedroom and I could hear Emma's voice through the wall talking on the phone. Mark's reaction to my tears was perfunctory, a brief hug, and mumbled reassurances that we'd keep trying. He didn't stay to hold me like he used to. He had a client dinner, he said. Emma's knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry seemed to expand overnight. At dinner, she discussed drug patents and sales strategies with Mark, while I listened lost in their technical jargon. When I asked how she'd learned so much so quickly, she laughed and said Mark had been teaching her, helping her prepare for her new role. "Your husband is brilliant," she told me one evening while Mark was supposedly at the gym. "You're so lucky to have someone who's both successful and willing to help others grow." The weekend before Thanksgiving, Mark attended a pharmaceutical conference in Boston. Emma coincidentally had plans to visit her college roommate in the same city. They insisted the timing was pure chance, even laughed about the funny coincidence. I spent the weekend alone going through the motions of normalcy, trying to ignore the voice in my head that sounded increasingly like Nancy's warnings. Sunday evening, while putting away laundry, I found a hotel keycard in Emma's jacket pocket. My hand trembled as I held the plastic card from the Marriott Boston Harbor. When I confronted her, she had an explanation ready. "Sarah lives near there, and I needed to use their bathroom when we were shopping. I must have absent-mindedly pocketed it." Mark appeared in the doorway, still in his weekend clothes. "What's going on?" When I showed him the keycard and explained my concerns, his face shifted through several expressions before settling on hurt disappointment. "Rachel, honey, are you seriously suggesting something inappropriate between me and your sister? That's sick." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you'd think that about us. I thought you trusted me." They stood there united in their indignation, making me feel like the villain in my own home. I apologized, blamed the fertility medications again, and retreated to our bedroom where I cried into my pillow until exhaustion took over. Lisa suggested hiring a private investigator when we met for coffee that week. "Something's not right, Rachel. You know it. Your intuition is screaming at you." But I couldn't do it. Hiring someone to spy on my husband and sister would mean admitting that my perfect life was a lie. Instead, I threw myself into work, staying late to help struggling students, volunteering for every committee and event. If I stayed busy enough, maybe the doubts would disappear. My journal from those weeks reads like a descent into madness. The insomnia that plagued me left me exhausted and fragile. Strands of hair collected on my pillow each morning, and my clothes hung looser despite eating normally. My body was manifesting what my mind refused to acknowledge. December brought the first snow and the ultimate revelation that would shatter my world completely. It was a Thursday, and I'd planned to surprise Mark with lunch at his office. The school had dismissed early for a Christmas program rehearsal, and I'd picked up sandwiches from his favorite deli. The receptionist at his company looked confused when I arrived. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm sorry, but Mark took a personal day. He said he had some family matters to attend to." Family matters. The words echoed in my mind as I thanked her and walked back to my car. My hands shook as I called Emma's workplace, pretending to be calling about a marketing inquiry. The cheerful voice on the other end informed me that Emma had called in sick that morning. The drive home felt both endless and too quick. Part of me wanted to turn around to pretend I'd never learned what I now knew with terrible certainty. But I continued forward, my car seeming to drive itself toward the confrontation I could no longer avoid. Mark's BMW sat in our driveway next to Emma's Honda. I parked on the street and entered through the back door, moving through my own home like an intruder. The house felt different, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I could hear voices upstairs, low and intimate. Each step on the staircase felt monumental. My hand gripped the banister so tightly, my knuckles went white. The master bedroom door was slightly open, and through the gap I could see them. They weren't just having sex. That would have been devastating enough. But what I witnessed was worse. They were making love tenderly, slowly, with the familiarity of established lovers. Emma was wearing the lingerie set Mark had given me for our anniversary, the delicate lace I'd been saving for a special occasion. His hands moved through her hair with practiced ease, and the words he whispered were ones I recognized, phrases I'd thought belonged only to us. They were so lost in each other they didn't notice me standing there frozen in the doorway. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to record them. Some primitive survival instinct knew I'd need proof that they'd try to deny or minimize what I was seeing. The video captured 43 seconds of my marriage ending before my presence finally registered. Emma saw me first. Her gasp made Mark turn, and the color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. They scrambled apart, grabbing for sheets and clothes, but it was pointless. We all knew what I'd seen. "Rachel," Mark started reaching for his pants. "This isn't—" "Don't." My voice came out stronger than I felt. "Don't you dare try to explain this away." Emma had started crying, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "Rachel, please, we never meant for this to happen. It just—" "How long?" I interrupted. "How long have you been fucking my husband in my bed?" They exchanged a glance that told me everything. This wasn't new. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. Since August, Mark finally admitted, unable to meet my eyes. A month after she moved in. 4 months. They'd been lying to my face for 4 months. Every dinner we'd shared, every conversation about Emma's job search, every time I'd defended them to Lisa, they'd been betraying me. "We fell in love," Emma whispered, as if that justified everything. "We tried to fight it, but—" "In love," I laughed, but it sounded harsh, broken. "You fell in love with my husband, and you—" I turned to Mark. "You fell in love with my baby sister." Mark found his courage then, or perhaps his audacity. "Rachel, our marriage has been struggling. The fertility issues, the stress. Emma and I connected on a different level." "The fertility issues," I repeated, incredulous. "You're blaming your affair on our inability to have children." "That's not what I meant." He backtracked, but Emma touched his arm, and he seemed to draw strength from her support. "We were planning to tell you after the holidays," Emma said, pulling on my robe, my favorite silk robe. "We didn't want to ruin Christmas for the family." The casualness of her statement, the assumption that they had a future to plan, broke something inside me. "Get out." "Rachel, be reasonable," Mark started. "Get out," I screamed, finding reserves of anger I didn't know existed. "Both of you, get your things and get out of my house right now." "This is my house too," Mark said, trying to assert some control. "Not anymore." I held up my phone. "I have video of you committing adultery in our marital bed. You can leave now, or I can send this to everyone we know, including your boss, who, if I remember correctly, has a strict morality clause in management contracts." They dressed in silence while I stood there, trembling but resolute. Emma tried to approach me as she passed, maybe to apologize again or explain further, but I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "I need to pack my things," she said quietly. "You have 10 minutes. Take only what you absolutely need. You can arrange to get the rest later when I'm not here." While Emma threw belongings into bags upstairs, Mark stood in our living room looking lost. "Rachel, we need to talk about this rationally. There are assets to consider, the house, our savings. My lawyer will contact yours," I said, surprised by my own calm. "And Mark, I know about the credit card you've been hiding, the one you've been using for your dates with my sister." His face told me I was right. Of course I'd been right. The signs had all been there. After they left, I called my parents. My father answered, and when I told him what had happened, his silence stretched so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "I'm coming over," he finally said. "No, Dad. I need some time alone." "Sweetheart, please, can you tell Mom I can't say it all again right now?" My mother called within minutes, her voice shrill with disbelief. "There must be some misunderstanding. Emma would never, Mark wouldn't—" "I have video, Mom." That silenced her. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Oh, Rachel. Oh, my poor girl." But even then, I could hear it in her tone, the subtle lean toward protecting Emma, her baby, the one who'd always needed extra help, extra understanding, extra forgiveness. I changed the locks that evening. A 24-hour locksmith came out, charged me triple for the emergency service, and I paid it gladly. Each new lock felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Lisa arrived with wine and tissues, having received my text that simply said, "You were right." We sat on my living room floor, and I showed her the evidence I'd found after they left. Hidden folders on Mark's computer filled with photos of them together. Credit card statements for restaurants, hotels, even jewelry. Text messages on his old phone that he'd forgotten to wipe, declarations of love and desire that made me physically ill. "This one's from October," Lisa read, her voice disgusted. He's telling her she's everything you're not. Spontaneous, exciting understanding. I laughed bitterly. Understanding. Because she understood him so well while living rent-free in the house I paid half of eating the food I bought wearing my clothes. The next morning brought a new blow. Emma had posted on Facebook announcing her pregnancy with an ultrasound photo. The timeline meant she'd gotten pregnant in September, while still living under my roof while I was crying over negative pregnancy tests. The post was carefully worded to suggest she and Mark had been together longer than they had already rewriting history. Mark had already updated his relationship status to, in a relationship with Emma Morrison. My sister. My husband. Having the baby, I couldn't conceive. My phone exploded with messages. Coworkers, friends, distant relatives, all reaching out with shocked sympathy or barely disguised curiosity. The small-town gossip mill was running at full speed. I turned off my phone and called in sick to work. Principal Johnson was understanding when I finally spoke to him on Monday, offering me as much time as I needed. The divorce proceedings began in January, and Mark fought me on everything. He wanted the house, claiming he'd paid more toward the mortgage. He wanted alimony, suggesting my teacher's salary was stable, while his commission-based income was variable. He'd emptied our joint savings account the day after I kicked him out, $23,000 gone in a single withdrawal. I took a leave of absence from teaching. Facing my third graders while my personal life imploded felt impossible. Their innocent questions about why Mrs. Patterson looked sad would have broken me completely. The principal understood arranging for a long-term substitute while keeping my position secure for when I was ready to return. My parents' reaction created another wound. While my father raged about betrayal and disrespect, my mother tried to play peacemaker. She'd say things like, "Emma's always been impulsive," or "This is hard on everyone," as if my pain and Emma's guilt deserved equal consideration. The divide it created between my parents added another layer to my grief. Thanksgiving was a disaster I should have avoided. I'd planned to skip it entirely, but my father convinced me to come, promising it would just be the three of us. When I arrived, Emma's car was in the driveway. She and Mark sat at the dining room table I'd eaten at every Thanksgiving since childhood, her pregnant belly visible beneath a designer maternity dress I couldn't have afforded. "We're all family," my mother said weakly when I stood frozen in the doorway. "We need to find a way forward." I left without a word, driving home through empty holiday streets, while tears blurred my vision. I spent Thanksgiving eating Chinese takeout alone, watching Netflix and trying to pretend it was just another Thursday. The financial pressure mounted quickly. Lawyer fees drained my savings, and with only my teaching salary, which I wasn't even currently earning, keeping up with bills became a juggling act. I sold my grandmother's jewelry pieces I'd planned to pass down to my own children just to pay for the divorce attorney. Each trip to the pawn shop felt like another small death. Small-town life became unbearable. At the grocery store, I'd catch people whispering behind their hands. Some offered genuine sympathy, but others seemed to feast on the drama. "I always thought Mark had wandering eyes," they'd say, or worse, "Emma always was the pretty one," as if that explained everything. The panic attack started in February. The first one hit in the cereal aisle at Stop and Shop. One moment I was reaching for oatmeal, the next, I was on the floor, unable to breathe, convinced I was dying. An elderly woman called an ambulance, and I spent 3 hours in the emergency room being told it was anxiety. Dr. Martinez, the therapist my insurance partially covered, became my lifeline. Twice a week I sat in her beige office and unpacked the betrayal, the anger, the devastating blow to my self-worth. "You keep saying you should have seen it coming," she observed during one session. "But betrayal by those we trust most is traumatic, precisely because we don't expect it. Your trust wasn't stupidity. It was love." The support group she recommended met in a church basement on Wednesday nights. 7 women, all at different stages of healing from various betrayals. There I met David, the only man in the group whose wife had left him for his younger brother. His presence reminded me that betrayal wasn't gendered, that pain was universal. David became a friend, nothing more, despite what others might have assumed. We'd get coffee after meetings comparing notes on the surreal experience of watching someone you loved choose someone else who should have been off limits. He never tried to turn it into something romantic, understanding that neither of us had the capacity for that kind of connection. "The worst part," he said one evening, "is that I don't just mourn my marriage. I mourn my relationship with my brother too. It's a double loss." I understood completely. I'd lost my husband and my sister in one terrible moment. Returning to work in March felt like climbing Mount Everest. The children had been told I was sick, and their welcome back cards covered my desk in crayon drawings and misspelled well wishes. Their innocence and joy provided small moments of light in my darkness. "Mrs. Patterson, my mommy says you're getting divorced," one student announced during reading time. "My daddy got divorced too, and now I have 2 bedrooms. The other teachers rallied around me, creating a protective buffer from gossip and speculation. But I could still feel the weight of being the woman whose husband left her for her sister, a small-town scandal that would follow me for years. Emma tried to rewrite history through strategic social media posts and carefully crafted narratives. According to her version, she and Mark had fought their feelings for months, tortured by guilt. She painted herself as a victim of love, unable to resist destiny. The posts about her pregnancy were especially painful weekly updates about the baby growing inside her, the child I'd dreamed of carrying. When Mark started showing up at places he knew I'd be, the coffee shop where I graded papers, the park where I jogged, I finally understood he was trying to intimidate me into accepting his divorce terms. He'd follow at a distance, never approaching, but always visible, a reminder that he could still affect my life. The restraining order process was humiliating but necessary. Standing in court describing how my estranged husband's presence made me feel unsafe while he sat there in his expensive suit looking wounded and innocent tested every ounce of strength I'd rebuilt. Christmas arrived with fresh pain. I decorated a small tree in my apartment, hung a single stocking, and tried to create some semblance of holiday spirit. But when I saw the Facebook photos from my parents' house, Emma and Mark celebrating with my family, her hand resting on her growing belly, while they stood where Mark and I had stood. Just 1 year earlier, I finally broke completely. I spent 3 days in bed, unable to eat, able to stop crying, and unable to see any future beyond this pain. Lisa found me when I didn't answer her calls using the spare key I'd given her. She stayed for a week, forcing me to shower, to eat, to take the medication Dr. Martinez had prescribed for the depression that had settled over me like fog. "You will survive this," Lisa promised, holding me while I sobbed. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you will. And someday you'll be grateful this happened because it led you to something better." I couldn't imagine that then. All I could see was the rubble of my former life and the long, impossible task of rebuilding from nothing. January brought unexpected clarity with the new year. I woke up on New Year's Day with a strange sense of determination, as if my body had finally processed enough grief to make room for something else. The apartment felt less like a prison and more like a blank canvas. I made a resolution that morning not to forget or forgive, but to reclaim my life on my own terms. The CrossFit gym intimidated me at first. Everyone seemed so fit, so confident, throwing around weights I could barely lift. But the owner, Tony, partnered me with Barbara, a 60-year-old powerhouse who'd started CrossFit after her own divorce 5 years earlier. "I used to be a divorce attorney," Barbara told me during our first workout, effortlessly doing pull-ups while I struggled with assisted ones. "Handled hundreds of cases. Then my husband left me for his secretary," such a cliché, and I realized I'd spent so much time fighting other people's battles that I'd forgotten to fight for myself. Barbara became more than a workout partner. She became a mentor, sharing her story of transformation. After her divorce, she'd left law, pursued her passion for baking, and now owned 3 successful bakeries in neighboring towns. "Anger is energy," she told me one morning as we lifted weights. "You can let it eat you alive, or you can channel it into something that feeds your soul." The baking started as therapy for my insomnia. 2 in the morning would find me in my tiny apartment kitchen measuring flour with scientific precision, kneading dough until my arms ached, creating something from nothing. The process soothed me in ways that surprised me. Unlike my marriage, baking had rules that, when followed, produced predictable results. My first successful creation was what I sarcastically called betrayal brownies, dark chocolate with a hint of cayenne for the slow burn of anger and sea salt for tears. I brought them to the support group, and everyone wanted the recipe. David joked that I should sell them, but Barbara's eyes lit up with possibility. "There's something here," she said, tasting her third brownie. "These aren't just good. They're memorable. They tell a story." I laughed it off, but Barbara persisted. She taught me about food costs, profit margins, and scalability. What started as casual lessons became serious mentorship. She had me creating new recipes, testing them on increasingly larger groups, refining based on feedback. The Instagram account began as a joke. David suggested I document my journey from betrayal to baking, and one wine-fueled evening I created Rising from Betrayal. The first post was a photo of my betrayal brownies with a caption about turning pain into purpose. Within a week, it had 3,000 likes and hundreds of comments from others who'd been betrayed, sharing their stories, finding comfort in mine. The viral moment came in March. I posted a before and after photo, one from my wedding day, standing between Mark and Emma, both smiling while planning their betrayal, and one of me in the gym, stronger and fiercer than I'd ever been. The caption read, "They took my marriage and my sister. I built a new family, a new body, and a new life. Your betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does." The post exploded. 50,000 likes in 2 days. Messages flooded in from around the world. The local newspaper called for an interview, then regional media picked up the story. Local teacher turns betrayal into business success became a feel-good piece that resonated with thousands. Emma and Mark showed up at my apartment one evening in April. She was 7 months pregnant, her face puffy and tired. Mark looked older, grayer, the charm that once captivated me seeming forced and desperate. "We need to talk," Mark said, trying to push past me into the apartment. "We have lawyers for that," I replied, blocking the doorway. "Rachel, please," Emma pleaded. "The stress isn't good for the baby." The audacity of her using the pregnancy against me, the pregnancy that should have been mine, sparked fresh anger. "Your baby isn't my concern. Neither are you." "You're being vindictive," Mark accused. "The restraining order fighting the divorce settlement. You're trying to punish us." "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." Emma started crying, the manipulation tactic she'd used since childhood. "I'm your sister. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything," I replied. "That's why your betrayal cut so deep." They left when I threatened to call the police, but the encounter strengthened my resolve. They'd made their choice. Now they had to live with the consequences. May brought opportunity in the form of a business competition for food entrepreneurs. Barbara encouraged me to enter, helping me refine my business plan. The competition required presenting to a panel of investors, and the winner would receive $50,000 in seed funding. I spent weeks preparing, creating samples, perfecting my pitch. The story of my bakery wasn't just about food. It was about transformation, resilience, and the alchemy of turning pain into purpose. When I stood before the judges, I didn't hide my story. I owned it. Every recipe in my collection represents a stage of healing. I explained, passing out samples. The betrayal brownies for anger, forgiveness, focaccia for letting go, rising rolls for hope. My bakery isn't just about feeding bodies. It's about feeding souls that have been starved by betrayal. I placed second, winning $20,000 and, more importantly, the attention of several investors. One judge, a successful restaurateur named Patricia, pulled me aside afterward. "Second place was politics," she said bluntly. "Your concept is brilliant. I want to invest privately." By July, I'd secured enough funding to lease a space in the Arts District. The building needed work, but it had good bones and excellent foot traffic. David, who worked in construction, helped coordinate renovations, refusing to accept payment beyond coffee and pastries. "You fed my soul when I needed it," he said, installing shelving. "This is my way of returning the favor." The support group rallied around the project. Women I'd cried with now painted walls, assembled furniture, and tested recipes. We'd become more than a support group. We'd become a chosen family bonded by shared pain and mutual healing. August marked 2 years since Emma had moved in with us. The anniversary hit harder than expected, but instead of dwelling, I threw myself into preparing for the bakery's September opening. Every detail mattered, from the color of the walls, warm terracotta for comfort, to the music playlist, uplifting but not aggressively cheerful. Rise and Shine Bakehouse felt like the perfect name. It suggested both morning baking and personal resurrection. The logo, a phoenix made of wheat stalks, captured the transformation theme without being too obvious. 3 weeks before opening, my mother visited the construction site. She stood in the doorway, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Your father and I have been fighting," she admitted, surveying the space. "He can't forgive me for trying to maintain a relationship with Emma." "That's your choice, Mom," I said, continuing to arrange display cases. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "I thought I could keep everyone together, but I just pushed you away. I'm proud of what you're doing here. You've become someone I barely recognize in the best way." The reconciliation wasn't complete, but it was a beginning. She started volunteering to help with opening preparations, and slowly we rebuilt our relationship on new terms. Opening day arrived with September sunshine and a line of customers around the block. The local media covered it as a follow-up to their original story. Friends, support group members, and curious strangers filled the space. Even Principal Johnson came with several teachers, buying dozens of pastries for the teachers' lounge. At 2 p.m, when the rush had calmed, Emma and Mark walked in. She was pushing a stroller, their baby girl sleeping inside. Mark looked uncomfortable, but Emma approached the counter with determination. "Could we talk?" she asked quietly. "You can order like any other customer," I replied professionally. "Or you can leave." "Rachel, please. Mark left me 3 months ago. He's with someone else now, someone from his gym. You need what?" I interrupted, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Forgiveness, support. A sister to lean on." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. The woman before me was a stranger who happened to share my DNA. "I need a job," she whispered. "I can't afford daycare, and no one will hire a single mom with no real experience." The irony was almost laughable. But as I looked at the baby innocent of her parents' choices, I made a decision that surprised even me. "You can work here," I said. "Part-time, minimum wage plus tips. You'll start with cleaning and prep work. If you prove yourself reliable, we'll discuss advancement. This is not forgiveness, it's business." Emma nodded frantically, agreeing to any terms. She started the following Monday, arriving early, working hard, keeping her head down. Other employees didn't know our history, and I kept it that way. She was just another employee, nothing more. By the 2nd anniversary of the bakery's opening, my life had transformed beyond recognition. 3 locations, 15 employees, and a thriving online ordering system that shipped nationwide. The Food Network special that aired in March brought unprecedented attention, with orders flooding in from across the country. The cookbook deal came through Patricia's connections. From Betrayal to Bread Recipes for Rising would be published by a major house with a significant advance and promotional tour. Each recipe included a personal essay about healing, creating a book that was part cookbook, part memoir, part self-help guide. The Victorian house I'd admired for years came on the market in April. Using my business success to secure a mortgage, I bought it myself, no cosigner needed. The closing day felt monumental, holding keys to a home I'd purchased with my own success, not shared dreams that could shatter. Thomas entered my life gradually, then all at once. An architect renovating the building next to my second location, he'd stop in for coffee and conversation. Unlike Mark's flashy charm, Thomas was steady, thoughtful, and respectful of boundaries. "I know you have a complicated history," he said on our first official date. "I'm not trying to rush anything. I just enjoy your company and want to see where this goes naturally." We took things slowly, building friendship before romance. He understood when I needed space, celebrated my victories without trying to claim credit, and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. When he met the support group, David pulled me aside afterward. "This one's different," David observed. "He looks at you like you're already whole, not like he's trying to fix you." Emma continued working at the original location, gradually earning trust through consistency. She never missed shifts, accepted any task without complaint, and slowly proved herself capable. Other employees liked her, unaware of our history. She kept her distance, personally understanding that professional interaction was all I could offer. One evening, while closing alone, I found her crying in the supply room. Her daughter Lily was sick, and she couldn't afford the specialist the pediatrician recommended. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly. "I just needed a moment." I wrote a check that night, not for Emma, but for Lily, an innocent child who deserved better than the circumstances of her conception. Emma tried to refuse it, but I insisted it was a loan against future wages, keeping the transaction professional. Mark's attempt to re-enter my life came through a pathetic email on what would have been our 10th anniversary. He wrote about missing what we had, regretting his choices, suggesting we could start fresh. I forwarded it to my lawyer without response. Later, I learned through the grapevine that his latest relationship had ended when she caught him cheating with yet another woman. The speaking engagements began after the cookbook's success. Women's conferences, business schools, and survivor organizations invited me to share my story. The message resonated: betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be a beginning. The scholarship fund started small, helping one single mother attend culinary school. By year 3, it supported 5 women annually, all survivors of betrayal who were rebuilding their lives through food service careers. Watching them graduate, knowing my pain had transformed into their opportunity, provided a satisfaction no revenge could match. David opened his restaurant 2 blocks from my 3rd location. We'd remained close friends, our shared experience creating an unbreakable bond. At his opening, he raised a toast to the walking wounded who learned to run. The support group members present understood completely. My parents found their way back to each other and to me. Dad's anger at Mom's initial response had created a rift, but counseling helped them navigate the complex dynamics of having one daughter who devastated the other. They volunteered at the bakery during busy seasons, and slowly we built new traditions that didn't include Emma. The moment I realized I'd truly healed came during a random Tuesday morning. A customer was going through a public divorce, her husband having left her for her best friend. She sobbed at a corner table, and I sat with her sharing my story. "When does it stop hurting?" she asked desperately. "It doesn't stop," I told her honestly. "It transforms. The pain becomes power, the anger becomes ambition, and the betrayal becomes the best thing that never should have happened to you. You'll hate that it happened, but you'll love who you become because of it." She contacted me a year later with photos of her own business launch, crediting our conversation with giving her hope when she had none. The fertility journey I'd abandoned during my marriage no longer felt urgent. Building the business, mentoring other women, and creating a chosen family had filled my life in unexpected ways. When Dr. Harrison called about new IVF technologies, I thanked her but declined. If motherhood was meant for me, it would come through adoption, fostering, or simply mothering the many women who came through my doors seeking hope. Thomas proposed on the bakery's 4th anniversary, understanding the significance of the date. He didn't try to replace what I'd lost, but offered to build something entirely new. The ring was modest, purchased with his own savings, not credit cards, hidden from another woman. "I'm not perfect," he said, kneeling in flour dust from the morning's baking, "but I promise to choose you, only you, every single day." The wedding was small, intimate, held in the bakery's newest location. The support group stood as my wedding party, David as my man of honor. My parents attended, and even Emma was there in the back as an employee serving guests. She'd earned that much through 4 years of consistent work, though we still hadn't spoken about anything beyond schedules and inventory. The business continued expanding with franchising opportunities arriving monthly. I selected carefully, choosing only franchisees who understood the mission beyond profit. Each location would reserve jobs for women rebuilding after betrayal, include our signature healing recipes, and contribute to the scholarship fund. Mark appeared one final time at a coffee shop where I was meeting with potential investors. He looked diminished, older than his years, the consequence of his choices etched in premature lines and thinning hair. "You won," he said, attempting his old charming smile. "There were no winners," I replied, gathering my documents. "Just survivors and casualties. You chose to be a casualty." He tried to follow me out, but Thomas appeared, having arrived early for our lunch date. The contrast between them was stark. Mark desperate and diminished, and Thomas solid and secure. Without a word, Thomas took my hand, and we walked away together, leaving Mark standing alone on the sidewalk. 5 years have passed since that December day when I discovered my husband with my sister, and the woman I am now would be unrecognizable to the woman I was then. That Rachel, the one who trusted blindly and loved without boundaries, had to die for this Rachel to be born. The transformation wasn't gentle or easy. It was forged in the fire of betrayal, hammered on the anvil of survival, and polished through the hard work of choosing to rise rather than remain fallen. The pain never fully disappears. It becomes a part of you, like a scar that aches before rain. There are still moments when I see sisters shopping together, laughing over coffee, sharing secrets, and I feel the ghost of what Emma and I once were. But that relationship, like my marriage to Mark, exists now only in photographs I've packed away, but can't quite bring myself to destroy. Emma still works at the bakery, promoted now to shift supervisor. She's proven herself reliable, competent, even gifted at customer service. We exchange professional pleasantries, discuss inventory and scheduling, but nothing more. She's never met Thomas beyond their initial introduction at the wedding. She doesn't know about our plans to adopt, about the house we're renovating for the family we're building. That intimacy, the privilege of knowing my life, was revoked the moment she chose my husband over our sisterhood. I've watched her struggle as a single mother, seen her age beyond her years, carrying the weight of her choices. Mark pays child support when he feels like it, shows up for Lily occasionally, but mostly continues his pattern of pursuing women he'll eventually betray. Emma bears this with a quiet dignity that might have earned my sympathy if the wound weren't so deep. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't what people think it is. It's not reconciliation or restored relationship. It's releasing the poison of resentment so it doesn't corrupt your own soul. I've forgiven Emma and Mark in the sense that I no longer wish them harm, no longer spend energy hating them. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean allowing toxic people back into your inner circle. The betrayal that should have destroyed me became my origin story. The catalyst for discovering strength I never knew existed. Without it, I'd still be teaching 3rd grade, which was fulfilling but not my passion. I'd still be in a marriage built on lies, trying to have children with a man incapable of true loyalty. I'd still be the girl who put everyone else's needs before her own, who trusted too easily and loved without protecting her heart. Now I run a business empire built from pain, transformed into purpose. I've helped dozens of women find their own paths from betrayal to triumph. I've created jobs, opportunities, and hope for people who thought their lives were over. The scholarship fund has grown beyond single mothers to include anyone rebuilding after betrayal, regardless of gender or circumstance. The speaking engagements have evolved into a book tour, a podcast, and consultancy work, helping other businesses create healing-centered cultures. What started as betrayal brownies has become a movement, a testament to the power of refusing to let pain have the final word. Thomas and I are building something beautiful and authentic. He knows my whole story, has seen me at my worst, and chosen to stay. When nightmares wake me remembering December's discovery, he holds me without trying to fix it, understanding some wounds need witnessing more than healing. Our love isn't the naive fairy tale I had with Mark. It's mature, considered, built on truth, rather than fantasy. We're in the process of adopting siblings, 2 children who've experienced their own betrayal through abandonment. We'll give them the stable, honest home they deserve, teaching them that trust can be rebuilt, that families can be chosen, that betrayal doesn't have to define your future. The business continues expanding but thoughtfully maintaining the mission at its core. Every franchise owner has their own story of rising from betrayal. Every location employs at least 3 people rebuilding their lives. The recipes have evolved, but the betrayal brownies remain our signature, a daily reminder that the worst ingredients can create the sweetest outcomes if you're willing to do the work. My relationship with my parents has found its equilibrium. They've learned to have separate relationships with their daughters, understanding that Emma and I will never share holidays or family gatherings again. It's not ideal, but it's honest, and after everything, honesty matters more than appearances. The support group still meets every Wednesday, though I attend less frequently now. New faces replace old ones as people heal and move forward. But the core message remains: you are not alone. You will survive this, and someday you'll help someone else believe the same thing. Success, I've learned, isn't the opposite of betrayal. It's not about proving them wrong or showing them what they lost. True success is building a life so full, so authentic, so purposeful, that their absence becomes irrelevant. It's looking in the mirror and loving the person trauma transformed you into, even while wishing the trauma never happened. The woman who stood in that bedroom doorway 5 years ago watching her life shatter couldn't have imagined this future. She thought the pain would kill her, that she'd never trust again, never love again, never feel whole again. She was wrong about everything except the pain. The pain was real, valid, and transformative. To anyone reading this who's standing in their own doorway watching their life shatter, know this: the pain you're feeling is real, and it's yours to feel fully. Don't let anyone minimize it, rush you through it, or tell you how to process it. But also know that this pain, this betrayal, this moment that feels like death, can become your resurrection if you let it. You don't need their apology to begin healing. You don't need them to admit wrongdoing to know you were wronged. You don't need their permission to rise. Your power lies not in their choices, but in yours, not in what they took, but in what you build from the rubble they left behind. The betrayal that broke me also built me. The sister and husband who abandoned me inadvertently gave me the gift of discovering my own strength. The life I lost was nothing compared to the life I've gained. And while I wouldn't wish this journey on anyone, I can't deny that I love where it led me. My bakery opens in 30 minutes, and already I can see customers gathering outside. Some are regulars who know my story, who come for more than pastries. They come for proof that survival is possible, that thriving after betrayal isn't just a dream, but a decision made daily to keep rising despite the weight of what happened. Emma will arrive soon for her shift. We'll nod professionally, discuss the day's specials and staffing needs. She'll work hard, serve customers well, and earn her wages fairly. But she'll never again earn my trust, my vulnerability, or my sisterhood. Those gifts, once given freely, are now reserved for those who've proven worthy of them. Thomas just texted that the adoption agency called with good news about the siblings. By Christmas, we'll be a family of 4 building new traditions untainted by betrayal. The children will grow up knowing that chosen families can be stronger than blood, that trust must be earned and maintained, that love should multiply joy, not divide loyalties. The sun is rising over the bakery, casting golden light through windows that fog with the warmth of baking bread. It's a new day full of possibility, unmarked by yesterday's pain. This is what rising looks like, not a dramatic leap, but a steady climb, one day, one choice, one small victory at a time. 5 years ago, I trusted my husband with everything. He secretly chose my sister, and years later, everything changed in ways none of us saw coming. They thought they were taking my life, but they were actually setting me free. They thought they were winning, but they were just revealing their true characters while inadvertently revealing mine. The girl who trusted blindly is gone, replaced by a woman who trusts wisely. The wife who was betrayed has become a partner who is cherished. The sister who was abandoned has become a mentor to many. The teacher who lost her way has become an entrepreneur who lights the path for others. This is my story, but it's not unique. Every day someone discovers betrayal, faces that doorway moment, and must decide whether to crumble or rise. If you're in that moment now, know that both responses are valid. Crumble first if you need to. Feel every sharp edge of the pain. Then when you're ready, and only when you're ready, begin the slow work of rising. Your rising won't look like mine. It might not involve businesses or books or speaking engagements. It might be quieter, more private, but no less powerful. It might be simply getting out of bed each morning, choosing to eat, choosing to shower, choosing to believe that tomorrow might hurt less than today. Those small choices are victories. Those tiny steps forward are progress. The transformation from victim to victor isn't instant or easy. It's earned through countless moments of choosing yourself when they chose each other, choosing growth, when they chose betrayal, choosing truth, when they chose deception. It's built on the foundation of refusing to let their choices define your worth or determine your future. As I unlock the bakery door and flip the sign to open, the first customer enters with a smile. She doesn't know my story, doesn't need to. She just knows she loves our forgiveness focaccia, and that the atmosphere here feels different somehow, warmer, safer, more honest than other places. That's the ultimate triumph over betrayal. Creating something so beautiful from something so ugly that people feel its power without knowing its source. Taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and alchemizing it into something that nourishes others. Transforming your deepest wound into your greatest strength. The man I trusted chose my sister. My sister chose my husband. They chose each other over me, over integrity, over family. But in doing so, they inadvertently chose to set me free. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from a sister who could betray so deeply. Free from the small life I'd settled for. Free to discover who I really was when everything I thought I was got stripped away. Their betrayal was my beginning. Their deception was my liberation. Their choice was my catalyst. And while I'll never thank them for the pain they caused, I can acknowledge that without that pain, I'd never have discovered my power. This is what it means to rise. Not to forget, not to forgive necessarily, but to transform. To take the materials of your destruction and build something magnificent. To prove that betrayal can break you open without breaking you down. To show that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for the best thing you'll ever become. The customers keep coming, the register keeps ringing, and life keeps moving forward. Emma works quietly in the back, preparing dough for tomorrow's baking. Thomas sends another text with heart emojis and excitement about our growing family. The support group sends messages about tonight's meeting topic. Publishers email about the next book deadline. Life rebuilt and restructured continues its beautiful rhythm. This is my story of betrayal and triumph of loss and discovery of death and resurrection. It's proof that you can trust the wrong people and still become the right person, that you can lose everything you thought mattered and gain everything that actually does. That betrayal, as devastating as it is, doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of the story you were always meant to write. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you with someone you loved deeply? How would you rise from that kind of devastation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of triumph over betrayal. Share this with someone who needs to hear that rising is possible, that betrayal doesn't have to be the final chapter. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your pain today can become your power tomorrow if you choose to rise.